They say you never really know someone until money is involved. I learned that lesson at 67 years old, when the man I'd trusted with my entire life, my husband of 40 years, looked me in the eye and told me there was nothing left, no savings, no retirement, no future. Just empty accounts and a mistress who wore the diamonds that should have been mine. But what Robert didn't know was that betrayal has a way of coming full circle. And sometimes, the woman he used to destroy you becomes the very weapon you need to destroy him. My name is Margaret Carter, but everyone has always called me Maggie. For 67 years, I've lived a life I thought was simple and honest. I was a school librarian for 35 years, the kind of woman who believed in doing things the right way, paying bills on time, saving what you could, and trusting the people you love. I met Robert when I was 25 years old at a community fundraiser. He was 27, working as an insurance broker, and he had this confidence about him that made me feel safe. He told me I'd never have to worry about money, that he'd take care of everything, and for 40 years I believed him. We had a good marriage, or so I thought. We raised 2 children, David and Lisa, in a 3-bedroom house on Maple Street. The house was paid off 15 years ago, and that felt like such an accomplishment. Our kids moved out, started their own lives in different states. David became an engineer in Texas, and Lisa married a doctor and moved to California. They were busy with their own families, and I understood. That's what happens when you raise your children, right? They go out and build their own lives. Robert retired from the insurance business when he turned 65. I had retired 2 years earlier. We weren't rich, but we had our Social Security, and Robert always assured me our retirement accounts were solid. He handled all the finances, always had. I trusted him completely. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband. Our days fell into a comfortable routine. I volunteered at the public library 3 days a week, helping children with reading programs. Robert said he did consulting work from home, helping former clients with their insurance needs. Some evenings he'd have dinner meetings with old business associates. I never questioned it. A man should be allowed to keep his professional connections, I thought. It was a Tuesday morning in September when everything changed. I remember because Tuesdays were my library days, and I was getting ready to leave when I heard the mailman at the door. I went to collect the mail. Mostly catalogs and bills. But there was one envelope that stood out. It was certified mail from Blue Cross Blue Shield, my health insurance company. My hands shook a little as I opened it. I'd had a routine procedure done the month before. Nothing serious. Just a minor issue the doctor wanted to check, and I was expecting the insurance to cover it. But the letter said my claim had been denied. Not just denied, it said my policy had been canceled 3 months earlier for non-payment of premiums. That couldn't be right. Robert handled all our insurance payments through our joint checking account. There had to be a mistake. I called the insurance company right away. The woman on the phone was polite but firm. She pulled up my account and confirmed that yes, the policy had been canceled in June due to 3 consecutive missed payments. She even gave me the dates. But that's impossible, I said, my voice tight. My husband handles our finances. He would never let our insurance lapse. I'm sorry, Mrs. Carter, the woman said. But according to our records, multiple notices were sent to your address. The policy is terminated. You'd need to reapply and pay all back premiums plus a reinstatement fee. I hung up the phone and stood in the kitchen, staring at nothing. My heart was beating too fast. There had to be an explanation. Maybe Robert had forgotten. Maybe there was an error at the bank. These things happened, didn't they? Robert was in his office upstairs. I could hear the faint sound of his voice. He was on the phone with someone, laughing about something. I waited until I heard him hang up, then I climbed the stairs. I knocked on his office door. We'd always had an understanding that when his door was closed, he was working and shouldn't be disturbed. But this was important. Robert? I opened the door. He was sitting at his desk, looking at his computer screen. When he saw me, something flickered across his face. Was it annoyance? But it was gone so quickly I thought I'd imagined it. Maggie, I'm in the middle of something, he said, his tone pleasant but distant. I need to talk to you about something important, I said, stepping into the room. I just got a letter from the insurance company. They say my health policy was canceled for non-payment. Do you know anything about that? Robert frowned, like he was trying to remember. The health insurance. Are you sure? I set up automatic payments for all of that. That's what I thought, I said, relief washing over me. So this must be a mistake on their end. Let me look into it, he said, turning back to his computer. I'll call them this afternoon and straighten it out. Don't worry about it. But Robert, they said they sent multiple notices. Maggie. He looked at me then, and his voice was kind but firm. I said I'll handle it. You know how these insurance companies are. They make mistakes all the time. I'll take care of it. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. So I nodded and left his office, closing the door behind me. But something felt wrong. It was a small feeling, like a pebble in your shoe. Not quite painful, but impossible to ignore. I went back downstairs and looked at the letter again. 3 months of missed payments. Multiple notices. How had I not seen any of those notices? Robert always brought in the mail before I got to it, I realized. He said it was because he was usually home when the mailman came. The pebble in my shoe grew sharper. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table. I told myself I was being paranoid. Robert had been handling our finances for 40 years. He'd never given me a reason not to trust him. But that little voice in my head wouldn't be quiet. That evening at dinner, I brought it up again. Did you call the insurance company? Not yet, Robert said, cutting into his chicken. I had back-to-back calls all afternoon. I'll do it tomorrow. Robert, this is important. If my insurance is canceled and something happens. Nothing's going to happen. Maggie. His voice had an edge to it now. Stop worrying. I told you I'd handle it. I didn't bring it up again that night. But I barely slept. I kept thinking about those missed payments. Those notices I'd never seen. And I kept thinking about how Robert had looked at me in his office. That flash of something in his eyes before he'd smoothed it over with his usual calm demeanor. The next morning, Robert left early for a breakfast meeting with a client. As soon as his car pulled out of the driveway, I did something I'd never done before in our entire marriage. I went into his office. My hands were shaking as I tried the desk drawers. The first 2 were unlocked, just office supplies, old files, nothing unusual. But the bottom drawer on the right side was locked. I stood there staring at that locked drawer for a long time. The voice in my head was screaming at me to stop, to trust my husband, to not be one of those suspicious wives who sneaks around. But that pebble in my shoe had become a stone, heavy and impossible to ignore. I went to the kitchen and found the small screwdriver from our junk drawer. My heart pounded as I went back upstairs. I'd never been good with tools, but desperation made me focused. It took me 15 minutes, but I finally managed to pop the lock. Inside the drawer were file folders, bank statements. I pulled them out with trembling hands. The first folder was labeled Household Account. I recognized it. This was our joint checking account where our Social Security deposits went and where all our bills were supposedly paid from. I opened the most recent statement. The balance was $347. I stared at that number. We should have had at least $4,000 in that account. Our combined Social Security was nearly $3,800 a month, and our basic bills, utilities, property tax, groceries, ran about $2,500. We should have been slowly building that account, not draining it. I looked at the transactions. There were the normal things, grocery store, electric company, water bill. But there were also transfers. Large transfers, far as $500 to an account I didn't recognize, $2,000 to something called Foster & Associates, $800 to another unknown account, multiple transfers every single month, draining our account to almost nothing. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the papers. I grabbed the next folder. This one was labeled Retirement Fund. We'd been putting money into our retirement accounts for 30 years. Between my teacher's pension fund and Robert's IRA, we should have had close to $400,000 saved. That money was supposed to be our security, our safety net for medical bills or if we ever needed care in our old age. I opened the statement. The balance was $3,247. The room spun. I sat down hard in Robert's desk chair, staring at that impossible number. $3,000. Where was the rest? Where were the 30 years of savings? I flipped through the statements, going back month by month. The withdrawals had started small, $5,000 here, $10,000 there. But in the last 2 years they'd gotten bigger, the $25,000, $40,000, or $60,000, all transferred to accounts I'd never heard of, all signed with a forged version of my signature that I could now see was clearly not my handwriting. I couldn't breathe. The papers fell from my hands and scattered across the desk. 40 years. 40 years of trust, of working, of saving, of believing my husband when he said everything was fine. It was all gone, and Robert had taken it. I don't know how long I sat in that chair, staring at those bank statements scattered across Robert's desk. It could have been minutes or hours. Time seemed to stop. My whole body felt numb, like I was watching this happen to someone else. Eventually, I heard a sound that jolted me back, a car door slamming outside. Robert was home. Panic flooded through me. I scrambled to gather the papers, trying to put them back exactly as I'd found them. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I shoved the folders back into the drawer and tried to close it, but the lock was broken now. There was no way to hide what I'd done. I heard the front door open downstairs. "Maggie, I'm home." I pushed the drawer closed as far as it would go and rushed out of the office, pulling the door shut behind me. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. "Up here!" I called out, trying to make my voice sound normal. "Just using the bathroom." I went into the bathroom and turned on the faucet, splashing cold water on my face. The woman staring back at me in the mirror looked like a stranger, pale, frightened, old. When had I gotten so old? I dried my face and went downstairs. Robert was in the kitchen, putting away groceries. He'd stopped at the store, apparently. He looked so normal, so everyday, humming quietly to himself as he organized cans in the pantry. "How was your meeting?" I asked. My voice sounded strange even to my own ears. "Good, good," he said without turning around. Old client wanted some advice on updating his life insurance policy. Easy consultation. I watched him put a carton of milk in the refrigerator. This man, who I'd shared a bed with for 40 years, who I'd raised children with, who I'd trusted with everything, was a stranger. How had I not seen it? "Robert," I said, "we need to talk about our finances." His back stiffened. Just for a second. But I saw it. "What about them?" He still didn't turn around. "I want to see our account statements. All of them." Now he turned. His expression was carefully neutral. "Why? Is this still about the insurance thing?" "I told you I'd handle it." "It's not just about the insurance," I said, and I was surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "I want to see where our money is. Our retirement accounts, everything." Something shifted in his face. His jaw tightened. "Maggie, you know I handle all that. You've never worried about it before." "I'm worrying about it now." We stood there in the kitchen, staring at each other. The afternoon light slanted through the window, making everything look surreal. I could hear the clock on the wall ticking, measuring out the seconds of our standoff. "Fine," Robert said finally. He walked past me, and I could smell his cologne, the same cologne he'd worn for 20 years. "Let me print out some statements for you. It'll take a few minutes." He went upstairs to his office. I stood in the kitchen, frozen. Part of me wanted to run up there, to confront him with what I'd found. But another part of me, the part that was screaming in terror, told me to wait, to be smart about this. I heard drawers opening and closing upstairs. The printer started running. 20 minutes later, Robert came back down with a folder. "Here," he said, handing it to me. His voice was calm, but there was something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Was it anger? Fear? Our main checking account, savings account, and the retirement fund summary. I took the folder with shaking hands and opened it. The statements inside showed completely different numbers than what I'd seen upstairs. The checking account showed a balance of $8,200. The retirement fund showed a $387,000. These were fake. He'd created fake statements to show me. I looked up at him. He was watching me with that same calm expression. "See," he said. "Everything's fine. We're in good shape. I don't know what you were worried about." I could have called him out right then. I could have screamed that I knew these were lies, that I'd seen the real statements. But something stopped me, some instinct for self-preservation. "Thank you," I heard myself say. "I'm sorry. I guess I was just being paranoid." Relief washed over his face. "It's okay, honey. I know money stuff can be stressful, but you don't need to worry. I've got everything under control." He kissed me on the forehead, actually kissed me, and then went into the living room to watch the news. I stood in the kitchen holding the folder of lies, and I realized something that made my blood run cold. Robert wasn't just stealing from me. He was preparing to leave me with nothing, and he'd been planning it for years. That night, I lay awake in bed beside him, listening to him snore. How many nights had I lain here, feeling safe and loved? How many years had I been living in a fantasy while he systematically destroyed our future? I waited until I was sure he was deep asleep. Then I slipped out of bed and went downstairs. I sat at the kitchen table in the dark and opened my laptop, the old one I used for emails and online recipes. I'd never been good with technology, but I knew enough to do basic things. I logged into our bank's website. Robert had written down all our passwords in a little book he kept in the kitchen drawer, in case anything ever happened to him. How thoughtful. I typed in the username and password for our joint checking account. The real balance appeared a 3D47. just like the statement I'd found. My hands were shaking, but I kept going. I found the transaction history and started going through it month by month. The pattern was clear. Money came in from our Social Security. Money went out to pay our basic bills. And then large chunks were transferred to 3 accounts I didn't recognize. I wrote down the account numbers and the name that kept appearing, Foster and Associates. Then I logged into the retirement account. The website asked for additional security questions. I knew the answers. Robert's mother's maiden name, the street we grew up on. I'd never thought about how easy it would be for him to answer my security questions too. The account balance of 3,247. And a history of massive withdrawals, all authorized with a signature that was supposed to be mine but wasn't. I sat there in the dark kitchen, staring at the screen, and I felt something inside me break. Not my heart. That would come later. This was something deeper. It was my sense of reality, my understanding of my own life. Everything I'd believed for 40 years was a lie. The sun was starting to come up when I finally closed the laptop. I hadn't cried yet. I was beyond tears. I was in some strange, numb place where nothing felt real. I made coffee and sat at the table watching the sky turn pink. I heard Robert get up, heard the shower running upstairs. He came down 20 minutes later, dressed in slacks and a polo shirt. "Morning," he said cheerfully, pouring himself coffee. "I've got a lunch meeting today with a potential client. I probably won't be back until mid-afternoon." "Okay," I said. He looked at me. "You feeling better about the money stuff?" "Yes," I lied. "I'm sorry I got so worried." "No problem." He kissed the top of my head. "That's what I'm here for, to take care of things so you don't have to worry." After he left, I sat there for a long time. Then I did something I probably should have done weeks ago. I called my son. "Mom," David sounded surprised. "We usually only talked on Sundays. Is everything okay? I need to ask you something," I said. My voice sounded strange, tight and thin. "When's the last time your father asked you for money?" There was a pause. "What do you mean?" "Just answer the question, David." Another pause. "Mom, is something wrong? Please, just tell me." "About 6 months ago," David said slowly. "Dad called and said you needed a new roof. Emergency repair. He asked if I could help with the cost. I sent him $5,000. We didn't need a new roof." "What?" "The roof is fine, David. It's only 15 years old." Silence on the other end. "Then, Mom, what's going on?" I told him. Not everything. I couldn't bring myself to say it all out loud yet. But I told him about the insurance cancellation, about the empty accounts, about the fake statements Robert had printed. "I'm coming there," David said immediately. "I'm getting on a plane today." "No," I said. "Not yet. I need to figure out what's really going on first. I need evidence." "Mom, he's stealing from you. That ice, what's going on?" "I know. But I need to know where it all went. I need to understand the whole picture before I do anything." We talked for another hour. David wanted to call a lawyer immediately. He wanted to confront Robert. But I convinced him to wait. I don't know why I needed to wait. Maybe I still didn't want to believe it was real. Maybe I was still hoping for some explanation that would make sense of everything. After I hung up, I sat at the table and thought about Foster and Associates. That name kept appearing in the transfers. Thousands and thousands of dollars sent to Foster and Associates. I opened my laptop again and searched for the name. It took me a while. I'm not good at internet searches, but I finally found it. Foster and Associates was a business consulting firm located downtown, about 30 miles away. The website showed a professional-looking office and a smiling woman in a business suit. Her name was Diane Foster. She was 45 years old, according to her bio. She'd started her consulting firm 10 years ago and specialized in helping small businesses with financial planning and growth strategies. She was beautiful, not in a flashy way, but in a polished, confident way that made me feel old and dowdy just looking at her picture. And there, in a photo gallery on the About Us page, was a picture from a business conference. Diane Foster standing next to a group of colleagues. And right there beside her, his hand on her shoulder, smiling at the camera like he had every right to be there, was my husband. That's when I finally cried. I printed out that photograph. I don't know why. Maybe I needed physical proof that what I was seeing was real. My hands were shaking so badly that the printer jammed twice before I finally got a clear copy. Robert and Diane Foster, standing together at some business conference. The photo was dated from 2 years ago. His hand was on her shoulder, casual and comfortable. They looked like a couple. They looked happy. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at that photo until my eyes burned. Then I went back to the website and read every single word. Diane Foster had started her consulting business 10 years ago. 10 years. That's when the withdrawals from our retirement fund had started. I went back through the bank statements I'd found in Robert's office. I'd been so focused on the amounts that I hadn't paid attention to the dates. But now I looked more carefully. The first transfer to Foster and Associates was dated May 15, 2015. Exactly 10 years and 4 months ago 10 years. He'd been with her for 10 years. I thought about all those business dinners, and client meetings and consulting calls. All those evenings he came home late, smelling like restaurant food and expensive wine. All those weekends he said he had to work. How stupid had I been? I spent the rest of that day going through everything I could find online about Diane Foster and her business. She had a LinkedIn profile, a Facebook page, an Instagram account. I looked at every photo, read every post, searching for more evidence of Robert. He was careful. There were no photos of them together on her social media. No tags, no mentions. But in some of the pictures from business events, I could see him in the background. Always there, always just on the edge of the frame. On her Instagram, there was a photo from 3 months ago. Diane wearing a diamond tennis bracelet. The caption said, "Treating myself after landing a major client. Fec success fe work hard play hard." I zoomed in on that bracelet. My heart stopped. I recognized those diamonds. They were from a set my mother had left me when she died. A necklace and bracelet that had been in our family for 3 generations. I'd kept them in a jewelry box in my closet. Or I thought I had. I ran upstairs to my bedroom and pulled out my jewelry box. My hands were shaking as I opened it. The necklace was there. But the bracelet was gone. Robert had stolen my mother's bracelet and given it to his mistress. I sat on the bedroom floor and finally let myself feel it, the full weight of the betrayal. Not just the money, though that was devastating enough. But this. He'd taken something precious from my family, something that connected me to my mother and grandmother, and he'd given it to another woman like it meant nothing. I cried until I had no tears left. Then I got up, washed my face, and went back downstairs. I had to think. I had to be smart about this. Robert came home at 4 o'clock, whistling as he walked through the door. "Good day?" I asked. My voice sounded almost normal. "Great day," he said. "Closed a nice deal. I'm thinking we should go out to dinner tonight. Celebrate a little?" Celebrate? With what money? I wanted to scream, but I didn't. "That sounds nice," I said instead. "We went to Mario's, our favorite Italian restaurant. We'd been going there for 20 years. Robert ordered wine, told the waiter to bring us the good stuff. He was in an expansive mood, smiling and chatting with me like everything was perfect. I watched him across the table, this man I'd loved for 40 years, and I felt nothing. No, that's not true. I felt something, a cold, hard anger that was growing in my chest like ice. "You seem quiet," Robert said, reaching across the table to take my hand. "Everything okay? Just tired?" I said. "I haven't been sleeping well." "You should make a doctor's appointment," he said. "Maybe you need something to help you sleep." How thoughtful. How caring. What a wonderful husband. We drove home in comfortable silence. Robert turned on the radio to his favorite jazz station. It was all so normal, so ordinary, like we were still the couple we'd been yesterday, last week, last year. But we weren't. We would never be again. That night, after Robert fell asleep, I went back to my laptop. I'd been thinking about something all through dinner. If Robert was giving Diane money, our money, to fund her business, then there had to be some kind of paper trail beyond just the bank transfers. I searched for business registrations in our state. It took me an hour. I'm not good at this kind of research, but I finally found what I was looking for. Foster and Associates was registered as an LLC and listed as a co-owner with a 40% stake in the company was Robert M. Carter. My husband owned nearly half of his mistress's business. He'd used our retirement money, money I'd earned as a librarian, money we'd saved together for 30 years, to buy himself into her company. I kept digging. I found loan documents, business filings, partnership agreements. It was all there, public record. If you knew where to look. Robert had invested $238,000 into Foster and Associates over the past 10 years. He was listed as a silent partner and financial advisor. Silent partner. That was one way to put it. But here's what really made me sick. According to the most recent filing, Foster and Associates was valued at approximately $1.2 million, which meant Robert's 40% stake was worth close to $500,000. He'd stolen our retirement and turned it into a business partnership with his mistress. And if Foster and Associates was worth that much, then Robert was actually sitting on more money than we'd lost. He just moved it somewhere I couldn't access it. The next morning, I called my daughter Lisa in California. Mom, she sounded worried. Is everything okay? David called me last night. He's really concerned about you. I need to ask you something, I said. Has your father ever asked you for money? Lisa hesitated.
Why are you asking, Lisa?
Just tell me. 2 years ago, she said quietly. He said you needed surgery, something with your heart. He said insurance wouldn't cover all of it and asked if we could help. Mark and I sent him $15,000. I closed my eyes. I never had heart surgery, Lisa. What? Her voice rose. Mom, what's going on? I told her everything. The empty accounts, the fake statements, Diane Foster, the business partnership, the stolen bracelet. Lisa started crying halfway through. I'm calling Mark, she said when I finished. We're getting you a lawyer today. This morning. Right now? Wait, I said. There's something I need to do first. Mom, no. You need to protect yourself. You need to file for divorce and get a restraining order and… I need to meet her, I said. Silence. The mistress. Lisa's voice was sharp with disbelief. Mom, why would you do that? Because I need to know if she knows, I said. I need to know if she's in on this or if she's another one of his victims. Who cares? Mom, she's sleeping with your husband? I know. But if she doesn't know what he's done, if she doesn't know where that money came from, then maybe she can help me. Help you. Lisa was incredulous. Mom, she's not going to help you. She's probably been planning this with him all along. Maybe, I said. But I need to know for sure. We argued for another 20 minutes, but I wouldn't budge. Finally, Lisa made me promise that I'd call a lawyer that same day and that I wouldn't do anything without telling her and David first. I promised, and I meant it, mostly. After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table and thought about Diane Foster. She was 45, successful, independent. Why would she need a 70-year-old married man? Unless she didn't know he was married. Unless Robert had lied to her the same way he'd lied to me. I looked at her photo again, that confident smile, that polished appearance. She didn't look like someone who'd knowingly participate in elder abuse. But then again, I'd thought Robert looked like an honest man. I picked up the phone and dialed the number for Foster and Associates. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear. Foster and Associates, this is Karen speaking. How may I help you? Yes, I'd like to schedule an appointment with Miss Foster, I said, for a consultation. Certainly. May I ask what type of services you're interested in? Financial planning, I said, for my retirement. There was a certain poetry in that. Let me check her calendar, Karen said. I heard keyboard clicking. Ms. Foster has an opening tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Would that work for you? Perfect, I said. I gave her a fake name, Margaret Johnson, and a phone number that was close to mine but off by 1 digit. I wasn't ready to reveal who I was yet. After I hung up, I sat there for a long time, thinking about what I was about to do. Part of me knew this was crazy. Part of me knew I should just call a lawyer and let them handle everything. But I needed to look this woman in the eye. I needed to see who she was, who Robert had chosen over me. And maybe, just maybe, I needed to see if there was any chance she could be an ally instead of an enemy. Because as I'd been going through all those records, all those bank statements and business filings, I'd realized something. Robert had been smart. Very smart. He'd moved money around in ways that would be hard to trace, hard to recover. If I went to court, I might get something back, but it would take years and cost a fortune in legal fees. But if Diane Foster didn't know what Robert had done, if she thought he'd invested his own money into her business, then she was sitting on evidence that could destroy him. She had the bank records, the business documents, everything I'd need to prove where our money had gone. I just had to convince her to give it to me. The next afternoon, I drove 30 miles to the address listed on the Foster and Associates website. It was a nice office building in a business park, the kind of place that looked successful but not flashy. I parked my car and sat there for a few minutes, trying to calm my breathing. I dressed carefully that morning, a nice blouse and slacks, my good shoes, a little makeup. I wanted to look respectable, dignified, not like some desperate old woman. The lobby was all glass and chrome. There was a young receptionist at the front desk who smiled at me. Mrs. Johnson, she asked, for your 2 o'clock with Miss Foster? Yes, I said. She's just finishing up with another client. Can I get you some water or coffee while you wait? Water would be lovely, thank you. I sat in one of the leather chairs and tried not to throw up. What was I doing here? What did I think was going to happen? 10 minutes later, a door opened and a man in a business suit came out. shaking hands with someone I couldn't see. He left, and then she appeared. Diane Foster was even more beautiful in person. She was tall, maybe 5'9", with dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She wore a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. And on her wrist was my mother's diamond bracelet. "Mrs. Johnson." She extended her hand with a warm smile. "I'm Diane Foster. Please come in." I shook her hand. Her grip was firm, professional. She had no idea who I was. I followed her into her office. It was spacious and well decorated. Modern furniture framed degrees on the wall, a large window overlooking the business park. There was a photo on her desk of her and a golden retriever. "Please have a seat," she said, gesturing to a chair across from her desk. "So, you're interested in financial planning for your retirement?" "Yes," I said. My voice was steady, surprisingly steady. "I've recently had some concerns about my financial security, and I wanted to speak with a professional." "I completely understand," Diane said. "Retirement planning can be stressful, especially if you're not sure whether your savings are properly invested. Can you tell me a little bit about your current situation?" This was it. This was my chance to tell her everything, to confront her, to demand answers. But as I sat there looking at her professional demeanor, her confident smile, the way she pulled out a notepad to take notes, I realized something. She had no idea. She genuinely thought I was a potential client. She wasn't nervous or suspicious. She was just a businesswoman doing her job, which meant Robert had lied to her too. I made a decision in that moment. I wasn't going to tell her who I was. Not yet. Not until I had a plan. "I'm recently widowed," I lied. "My husband handled all our finances. And I'm realizing that I don't really understand where our money is, or if it's properly managed. I need someone to help me understand my situation and make sure I'm protected." Diane's expression softened with sympathy. "I'm so sorry for your loss. That must be incredibly difficult. But you're doing the right thing by taking control of your finances. Let's start with the basics. Do you know what accounts you have? Retirement funds, savings, investments?" We spent the next hour talking about finances. Or rather, Diane talked and I listened. She explained different types of retirement accounts, investment strategies, risk management. She was smart, articulate, and genuinely seemed to care about helping people. I hated her, not because she was a bad person, but because she was everything I wasn't. Young, successful, confident, the kind of woman Robert had chosen over me. But I also saw an opportunity. "You've been very helpful," I said as our meeting wound down. "I'd like to hire you to help me sort through my financial situation, but I need someone I can trust completely. Can I ask you something personal?" Diane looked surprised but nodded. "Of course. Are you married?" She laughed, a little uncomfortable. "No, I'm not. I've been focused on building my business." "Why do you ask?" "Because I need to know that the person handling my finances doesn't have any conflicts of interest. My husband made some decisions without telling me, and I don't want that to happen again." Diane's expression became serious. "Mrs. Johnson, I can assure you that everything we do will be completely transparent. You'll have access to all your accounts, all the paperwork, everything. I don't believe in keeping clients in the dark." "What about business partners?" I asked. "Do you have anyone else involved in your firm who might have access to client information?" "I have a silent partner who helped fund the business," Diane said. "But he's not involved in day-to-day operations or client relationships. He's strictly on the financial side." "What's his name?" I asked, even though I already knew. "Robert Carter," she said. "He's a retired insurance broker. Very knowledgeable about financial planning. And your relationship with him is purely professional." Diane's cheeks colored slightly. "Why do you ask?" "Because I need to know who has access to my information," I said firmly. "I'm trusting you with my entire financial future." Diane looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, "Robert and I have been in a relationship for about 3 years. We keep it separate from business, but yes, we're together. He's divorced, and we're talking about getting married next year." "He's divorced." Those 2 words hit me like a physical blow. I managed to keep my expression neutral, but inside I was screaming. Robert had told her he was divorced, which meant he was planning to divorce me soon, and when he did, he'd already have all our money safely tucked away in a business that I couldn't touch. "Mrs. Johnson." Diane leaned forward, concerned. "Are you all right? You look pale." "I'm fine," I said, standing up. "I just need to think about all of this. Can I call you in a few days?" "Of course," Diane said, standing as well. She handed me her business card. "Take all the time you need, and please, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out." I shook her hand again, the hand wearing my mother's bracelet, and walked out of that office. I made it to my car before I started shaking. I sat in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe. Robert was planning to divorce me. He'd already told his mistress he was divorced, which meant the papers were probably already drawn up, just waiting for the right moment. And when he served me with those papers, I'd have nothing. No retirement savings, no insurance, no security. Just an old house and whatever pittance I could get from Social Security. He'd been planning this for years. Slowly, methodically, moving all our money where I couldn't reach it. And then he'd leave me with nothing while he started a new life with a younger woman, living off the fortune he'd stolen from me. I drove home in a daze. When I walked through the door, Robert was in the living room watching television. "Hey, honey," he said without looking up. "Where've you been?" "Just running errands," I said. "Dinner's in an hour, okay?" "Okay." I went upstairs to our bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. My mother's jewelry box was still on the dresser where I'd left it the day before. I opened it and looked at the necklace. The only piece of my mother's that I had left. That's when I made my decision. Robert wanted to destroy me. Fine. But I wasn't going to let him do it quietly. I wasn't going to just disappear into poverty while he rode off into the sunset with his mistress and my money. If he wanted a war, I'd give him a war. But I was going to need help. And ironically, that help was going to come from the woman who was sleeping with my husband. I just had to figure out how to make Diane Foster my ally instead of my enemy. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed next to Robert, listening to him breathe, and I planned. I thought about everything I knew, everything I'd discovered, and how I could use it. Diane Foster thought Robert was divorced. She thought he'd invested his own money into her business. She had no idea that she was wearing stolen jewelry, or that her company was built on money taken from a retirement fund that belonged to another woman. If I could prove that to her, if I could show her what Robert really was, then maybe she'd help me. Or at least maybe she'd stop protecting him. But I needed more evidence. I needed something undeniable, something that would make her believe me instead of him. The next morning, Robert announced he was going out of town for a few days. "Business conference in Chicago," he said over breakfast. "I'll be leaving Thursday morning, back Sunday night." "Chicago?" I asked. "What conference?" "Insurance industry thing," he said smoothly. "Some of my old colleagues invited me to speak on a panel about retirement planning. Good networking opportunity, retirement planning." The irony was almost funny. "That sounds nice," I said. Thursday morning, I helped him pack his suitcase. I watched him choose his clothes carefully, his best shirts, his good shoes. He packed cologne, his electric razor, even the nice watch I'd given him for his 60th birthday. He kissed me goodbye at the door. "I'll call you when I get to the hotel. Drive safe," I said. I watched him pull out of the driveway. Then I went upstairs to his office. I had 3 days. 3 days to go through everything without worrying about him coming home and catching me. I started with his computer. I didn't know his password, but I remembered that little book in the kitchen drawer where he kept all our passwords for emergencies. I found it and went back upstairs. His password was Insurance 2015, the year he'd met Diane. Of course it was. His computer opened up, and I started searching. His email first. He had 3 email accounts, one I knew about that he used for general correspondence, and 2 I didn't. I went through all of them, reading every message from the past year. Most of it was boring. Spam newsletters, correspondence with old clients. But then I found the folder labeled DF, Diane Foster. There were hundreds of emails between them, going back 10 years. I started reading. The early ones were professional. Discussions about starting the business, financial projections, partnership agreements, but gradually they changed. They became more personal, flirtatious, intimate. By 2022, they were planning a future together. Robert wrote about how he was handling things at home, how he was setting everything up so they could be together. He talked about retiring from his current situation and starting fresh with her. Current situation, that's what he called me. His wife of 40 years was a situation he needed to retire from. There was an email from 6 months ago that made my blood run cold. "Dying. My love, the lawyer says everything is in order. The accounts have been properly restructured, and when I file for divorce, she won't be able to touch the business assets. We've been smart about this. She'll get the house and her Social Security, which is more than fair. By this time next year, we'll be free to start our life together. I can't wait to marry you." I read that email 5 times. He'd already talked to a lawyer. He'd already restructured everything. He was just waiting for the right moment to serve me with papers. More than fair. He thought leaving me with a house and social security was more than fair after stealing our entire retirement. I kept reading. There were emails about their trips together. Weekends when he'd told me he was at conferences or client meetings. There were emails about the jewelry he'd given her. Your mother's bracelet looks beautiful on you, he'd written. It belongs to someone who appreciates beauty. I had to stop reading for a while. I went to the bathroom and threw up. When I came back, I forced myself to keep going. I needed to see everything, know everything. Then I found the most recent email, sent just 2 days ago. Diane. I'm not actually going to Chicago this weekend. I'm filing the divorce papers on Monday. I've scheduled a meeting with her for Monday afternoon at the house. My lawyer will be there. I'm getting this done now, before the holidays. I don't want to spend one more Christmas pretending. By New Year's, we can announce our engagement. I love you, Monday. He was going to serve me with divorce papers on Monday. Today was Thursday, which meant I had 4 days before Robert destroyed my life completely. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely move the mouse. I needed to copy these emails, save them somehow. I found a flash drive in Robert's desk drawer and started copying everything, emails, documents, financial records, everything I could find. It took me 3 hours. When I was done, I had proof of everything. The affair, the theft, the planning, all of it. I put the flash drive in my purse. Then I sat in Robert's chair and tried to think. I could call a lawyer right now. I could file for divorce myself today and beat him to it. I could use these emails as evidence, but that would take time. Months, maybe years, and in the meantime I'd have to pay for a lawyer, go through depositions and court hearings, and hope that the judge believed me and ordered Robert to pay me back. There had to be a faster way, a better way. I thought about Diane again. She still didn't know any of this. She thought Robert was divorced, thought he'd invested clean money into her business, thought she was getting a devoted partner who'd chosen her freely. If she knew the truth, if she knew that her entire relationship was built on lies and stolen money, she'd be devastated and angry. An angry Diane Foster with access to all of Robert's financial records could be a very powerful ally. I called her office. The same receptionist answered. Foster and Associates, this is Karen. Hi, this is Margaret Johnson. I met with Miss Foster earlier this week about financial planning. I'd like to schedule another appointment if possible. Tomorrow, if she has time. Let me check her calendar. A pause. She has an opening at 10 tomorrow morning. Would that work? Perfect. I hung up and sat there, thinking about what I was going to say. How do you tell a woman that her boyfriend is actually still married and has been lying to her for years? How do you convince her that you're telling the truth and he's the villain? That night, I couldn't eat. I felt sick, anxious, like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. Around 9 o'clock my phone rang. It was Robert. Hi, honey, he said. His voice was warm, affectionate. Just got to the hotel. It's nice. Wish you were here, liar. He wasn't at a hotel in Chicago. He was probably at Diane's house, or maybe at some romantic restaurant, celebrating the fact that he'd be free of me in just a few more days. That's nice, I said. How was the drive? Long, but good. I'm exhausted. Probably going to order room service and get to bed early. We talked for a few more minutes about nothing. The weather, the conference schedule, whether I'd remembered to water the plants. It was so normal, so ordinary. Like we were still a real couple instead of a dying marriage held together by lies. After we hung up, I went to our bedroom and looked at our wedding photo on the dresser. We'd been so young, 25 and 27, standing outside the church in our wedding clothes, smiling like we had our whole lives ahead of us. I'd loved him so much. I'd trusted him completely. I'd given him 40 years of my life, and this was how it ended, with him stealing everything and leaving me for another woman while I scrambled to survive. The anger came back then, hot and fierce. No, I wasn't going to let him do this. I wasn't going to be the pathetic abandoned wife who lost everything. I was going to fight. That night I barely slept. I kept thinking about the meeting with Diane tomorrow, rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd say it. But around 3 in the morning, something happened. I got up to use the bathroom, and suddenly the room started spinning. My left arm went numb. The left side of my face felt strange, tingly. I tried to call out, but my words came out slurred. I was having a stroke. I managed to grab my phone from the nightstand. My fingers wouldn't work properly, but I somehow dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? Help? I tried to say, but it came out wrong. Stroke. I think stroke. Mom, what's your address? I gave it to her, my words thick and clumsy. She stayed on the line with me, asking questions, telling me help was coming. Everything after that is blurry. I remember the paramedics arriving, the ambulance ride, the bright lights of the emergency room, doctors and nurses asking me questions, doing tests, hooking me up to machines. They gave me medication, something to break up the blood clot, they said. They told me I'd gotten help quickly, that it could have been much worse. By morning, I could talk again, though my words were still a bit slurred. My left arm was weak but working. The doctor said I'd been lucky. Very lucky. It was a minor stroke, and if I followed treatment, I should recover most of my function. They wanted to keep me in the hospital for a few days for observation. A nurse asked if there was someone they should call. Family. My husband, I said. The words tasted bitter in my mouth. He's in Chicago, for business, they called him. I heard the nurse on the phone with him, explaining what had happened. Then she handed me the phone. Maggie. Robert's voice sounded concerned, worried. Oh my God, are you okay? I'm fine, I said. My words were still a bit thick. Minor stroke, they say I'll be okay. I'm coming home right now. I'll be there in a few hours. You don't have to. Of course I do. You're my wife. I'm coming home. He hung up. I handed the phone back to the nurse. He was coming home, which meant he was either actually in Chicago, or he was with Diane, and would have to explain to her why he was suddenly leaving. Either way, my plan to meet her today was ruined. I lay in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, and I realized something. The stress of all this, the discovery, the betrayal, the planning, had literally almost killed me. Robert hadn't just stolen my money. He'd stolen my health, my peace of mind, my future. And if I didn't do something soon, he might end up killing me for real. A different nurse came in later that morning. She was older, maybe in her 50s, with kind eyes. How are you feeling, Mrs. Carter? Tired, I said. Angry. She smiled a little. Anger's normal after a stroke. The stress, the fear. It's a lot to process. I'm not angry about the stroke, I said. The words were coming easier now. I'm angry about why I had the stroke. She looked at me curiously. What do you mean? And suddenly, I was telling her. I don't know why. Maybe because she was a stranger, or maybe because I was so tired of carrying it all alone. But I told her everything. The stolen money, the mistress, the divorce papers coming on Monday, all of it. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she sat down in the chair next to my bed. Mrs. Carter, she said quietly, I'm going to tell you something. I went through almost the exact same thing 10 years ago. My husband cleaned out our accounts and left me for his secretary. I was 60 years old, no savings, no plan. I thought my life was over. What did you do? I asked. I fought. I got a good lawyer. I documented everything and I took him to court. It took 3 years, but I got back about 60% of what he stole. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. 3 years, I said. I don't have 3 years. He's filing for divorce on Monday. Then you need to file first, she said. Today. Right now. Call a lawyer from this hospital bed and get those papers filed before he can. And you need to freeze all your joint accounts so he can't move any more money. But I don't know any lawyers. I do, she said. She pulled out her phone. The woman who handled my case. She's excellent, and she doesn't take crap from anyone. Her name is Patricia Montgomery. I'm going to give you her number, and you're going to call her right now. She wrote down the number on a piece of paper and handed it to me. Thank you, I said. My eyes were filling with tears. You're not alone, she said. And you're not helpless. You're having a temporary setback, but you're strong. You survived this stroke, and you'll survive this too. After she left, I stared at that phone number for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and dialed. A professional voice answered. Montgomery Law, how may I help you? My name is Margaret Carter, I said, and I need help filing for divorce. Immediately. Patricia Montgomery came to the hospital that same afternoon. She was in her 50s, sharply dressed in a navy suit, with gray hair cut in a neat bob and eyes that missed nothing. She sat down in the chair next to my hospital bed and pulled out a legal pad. Tell me everything, she said. Start from the beginning. So I did. I told her about the insurance cancellation letter, the empty bank accounts, finding the fake statements, discovering Diane Foster, the stolen jewelry, the emails planning my divorce. I told her about the money Robert had moved into the business, about how he'd told Diane he was divorced, about how I had 4 days before he served me with papers. Patricia took notes the entire time, her pen moving quickly across the page. When I finished, she looked up at me. Do you have evidence of all this? I pulled the flash drive from my purse. Everything. Bank statements, emails, business records. It's all here. She took the flash drive and examined it. Good, that's very good. Most people don't think to document things before they confront their spouse. You did the right thing. What happens now? I asked. Now we file for divorce before he does. We also file for an emergency restraining order to freeze all joint accounts and prevent him from transferring or hiding any more assets. And we file a civil suit for fraud and theft. My head was spinning. Can we really do all that? Mrs. Carter, your husband has been systematically stealing from you for years. He's committed fraud by forging your signature on financial documents. He's hidden marital assets in a business partnership. Yes, we can absolutely do all that. And we're going to win. How long will it take? Patricia's expression became more serious. I'm not going to lie to you. These cases can take time, months, sometimes years. Your husband has been careful about moving money around. We'll get it back, but it won't be quick or easy. I don't have months, I said. I had a stroke because of the stress of all this. The doctor says I need to avoid stress, keep my blood pressure down. How am I supposed to do that while fighting a years-long legal battle? One day at a time, Patricia said gently, and with a good support system. Do your children know what's happening? They know some of it. Not everything. You need to tell them everything. You're going to need their support, both emotionally and possibly financially. Legal battles are expensive, and your husband has made sure you don't have easy access to funds. I closed my eyes. This is really happening, isn't it? My marriage is really over. Your marriage was over the moment he decided to steal from you and betray you, Patricia said. Her voice was firm but not unkind. What we're doing now is making sure you survive it. She spent the next hour going over paperwork with me, having me sign documents authorizing her to represent me. She explained that she'd file everything electronically today, and by tomorrow morning, Robert would be served with divorce papers and a restraining order on our accounts. What about the business? I asked. Foster and Associates. Can we get that money back? That's more complicated, Patricia said. He invested marital funds in a business entity. We can argue that you're entitled to half of his share of that business, or the cash equivalent. But if the business was properly set up, and he used legal means to transfer the money, it might be difficult to prove fraud. We'll try, but I want you to understand that this part will be the hardest fight. So he might get away with it. Not entirely, but he might not lose everything either. That's the reality of divorce law, especially when one party has been planning and preparing for years. After Patricia left, I lay in the hospital bed feeling exhausted and overwhelmed. I'd done it. I'd filed for divorce. By tomorrow, Robert would know that I knew everything. Part of me was terrified. Part of me was relieved. But mostly I just felt tired. Robert arrived at the hospital around dinner time. He rushed into my room looking genuinely concerned, carrying flowers and a bag from my favorite bakery. Maggie, he said, taking my hand. I got here as fast as I could. How are you feeling? I looked at him, this man who'd shared my bed for 40 years, who I'd trusted with my life, and I felt nothing. No love, no anger, just a cold, empty distance. I'm okay, I said. They say I'll make a full recovery. Thank God. He sat down in the chair, still holding my hand. You scared me half to death. When I got that call, I don't know what I thought. You thought you might lose me before you could divorce me. The words came out before I could stop them. Robert's face went pale. What? Nothing, I said. I'm just tired. The medication makes me say strange things. But he was looking at me differently now, warily, like he wasn't sure what I knew. The doctor says you need to avoid stress, he said carefully. Maybe we should talk about getting you some help when you come home. Someone to come in and help with housework, cooking, that kind of thing. That's thoughtful, I said. But I think I'll be fine. We sat in awkward silence for a few minutes. Then Robert said, The nurse told me you had your laptop here. Have you been working on something? Just checking email, I lied. Letting the library volunteers know I'll be out for a bit, right? Good. But he looked suspicious. A nurse came in to check my vitals, and Robert stepped out to make a phone call. I could hear him in the hallway, his voice low. Something's wrong, he was saying. I don't know, she's acting strange. Like she knows something. He was calling Diane, I realized. Warning her. When he came back in, his expression was smoothed over, friendly again. That was David, he lied. I let him know you're okay. He was worried. That's nice, I said. Robert stayed until visiting hours were over. He kissed me on the forehead before he left, the same way he'd done 1,000 times before. But now it felt like a performance, like he was playing the role of concerned husband for the benefit of the nurses. "I'll be back first thing in the morning," he said. "Try to get some rest." After he left, I called David. "Mom, how are you feeling?" "Dad called and said you had a stroke. I'm booking a flight right now." "David, wait. I need to tell you something. Your father didn't call you tonight." "What?" "But he just said." He lied. He was calling his mistress, warning her that I might know about them. Silence on the other end. Then, "Mom, what's going on?" I told him about Patricia Montgomery, about filing for divorce, about the restraining order that would be served tomorrow. "Good," David said fiercely. "That bastard. I hope they throw him in jail." "David, I need you to do something for me. I need you to not tell your father that you know any of this. If he calls you, pretend everything is normal. Can you do that?" "Why?" "Because tomorrow, when he gets served with those papers, he's going to try to move more money or hide more assets. I need him to think I'm just a sick old woman who doesn't understand what's happening. I need him to underestimate me." "Mom, you're not." "I know I'm not, but I need him to think I am, just for a little while longer." David agreed, reluctantly. After we hung up, I lay in the dark hospital room and thought about tomorrow. By this time tomorrow, Robert would know that I'd filed for divorce. He'd know that our accounts were frozen. He'd panic, probably. Try to contact his lawyer, try to move whatever money he still could. But there was one thing he wouldn't know. One piece of this puzzle that I was still holding close. He wouldn't know that I was planning to tell Diane Foster everything. The next morning, Patricia called. "The papers have been served. Your husband should be receiving them right about now." "What happens next?" "He'll probably call you. He'll try to talk to you, maybe convince you to drop the divorce. Don't engage. Don't argue with him. Just tell him to have his lawyer contact me, okay? And Mrs. Carter, brace yourself. When men like your husband get cornered, they don't always react well." She was right. My phone rang 20 minutes later. Robert's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring. He called again, and again. On the fourth call, I answered. "Maggie, what the hell is this?" His voice was tight with barely controlled anger. "I just got served with divorce papers and a restraining order." "What are you doing?" "I'm protecting myself," I said calmly. "Protecting yourself? From what?" "Maggie, I'm your husband. I've been taking care of you for 40 years. By stealing our retirement savings. By forging my signature on financial documents. By planning to divorce me and leave me with nothing while you run off with your mistress." Silence. Long, heavy silence. "I don't know what you think you know," he started. "I know everything, Robert. I have all the emails, all the bank statements, all the evidence of what you've done, and my lawyer has copies of everything." More silence. "Maggie, listen to me." His voice changed, became softer, pleading. "I think you're confused. The stroke, the medication, it's affecting your thinking. You're not yourself right now. Don't," I said. "Don't try to gaslight me. I know exactly what you've done, and I have proof. If you want to talk about this, you can have your lawyer contact mine. Her name is Patricia Montgomery." "Maggie, please?" I hung up. My hands were shaking, but I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Power, control. For the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't the victim. I was fighting back. The phone rang again immediately. Robert. I didn't answer. He called 6 more times over the next hour. I ignored every call. Then my phone buzzed with a text message from a number I didn't recognize as Carter. "This is Diane Foster. Robert just called me, very upset. He says you've filed for divorce and made some serious accusations against him. I think we need to talk. Please call me at this number." I stared at that text for a long time. This was it. This was my chance to tell her everything, to show her who Robert really was. I called her. "Mrs. Carter." Diane's voice was carefully neutral. "Thank you for calling me back. Actually," I said, "it's Mrs. Carter, not Mrs. Johnson. I lied about my name when I came to see you the other day." A pause. "I don't understand. My name is Margaret Carter. I'm Robert's wife. And I'm not divorced. I never was." I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. "Then, that's not possible. Robert told me." "Robert lied to you. He's been lying to both of us for years. And I can prove it." "Mrs. Carter, I think you're mistaken. Robert and I have been together for 3 years, and he told me from the beginning that he was divorced." "He lied?" I said firmly. "And I need you to meet with me so I can show you the proof. Not for my sake. For yours. Because the money he invested in your business, that was stolen from our retirement fund. And the jewelry he gave you, that belonged to my mother. And if you don't believe me, you're going to find yourself in a lot of legal trouble when this all comes out." Silence. "I don't believe you," Diane said, but her voice wavered. "Then meet with me and I'll show you the evidence. Tomorrow. I'm being discharged from the hospital in the morning. Meet me at Starbucks on Main Street at 2 o'clock. Bring your business records. All the paperwork related to Robert's investment in Foster and Associates. I'll bring my evidence. And then you can decide for yourself who's telling the truth." Another long pause. "Fine," Diane said finally. "Tomorrow at 2. But if you're lying about any of this, if this is some kind of scheme too—" "I'm not lying," I said. "I wish I was." I hung up and lay back against the hospital pillows. Tomorrow, I'd show Diane Foster the truth about the man she thought she was going to marry. Tomorrow, I'd turn Robert's mistress into my ally. And then, together, we'd make sure Robert Carter paid for what he'd done to both of us. The doctor discharged me from the hospital the next morning with strict instructions: no stress, regular medication, follow-up appointments every week. I nodded and agreed to everything, knowing that what I was about to do was the exact opposite of stress-free. David wanted to fly in from Texas, but I told him to wait. "Not yet," I said. "I need to handle this first. Then you can come?" Robert had called me 12 more times since our last conversation. I hadn't answered any of them. He'd also sent text messages, first angry, then pleading, then threatening to come to the hospital. I'd forwarded all of them to Patricia. "Good," she'd said. "Keep records of everything. The more he harasses you, the stronger our case becomes." I took a taxi home from the hospital. I didn't want Robert picking me up, didn't want to be trapped in a car with him. When the taxi pulled up to our house on Maple Street, I saw his car in the driveway. My hands started shaking. I hadn't seen him in person since before I'd filed for divorce. Since before he knew that I knew everything. I paid the driver and walked slowly up to the front door. Before I could put my key in the lock, the door opened. Robert stood there, and he looked terrible. His eyes were red, his hair was messy, and he was still wearing the same clothes from yesterday. He looked like he hadn't slept. "Maggie," he said. His voice was hoarse. "Please. We need to talk. I told you to have your lawyer contact mine," I said. "Forget the lawyers for a minute. Please, just talk to me." He stepped aside to let me in. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to turn around and leave. But this was my house too. I wasn't going to let him force me out of my own home. I walked inside. The house looked the same as always. The same furniture we'd bought 20 years ago, the same photos on the walls, the same kitchen table where we'd eaten thousands of meals together. But it felt different now, like I was visiting a museum of a life that didn't exist anymore. "Sit down," Robert said, gesturing to the living room couch. "Please." I sat, keeping my purse close to me. Inside was the flash drive with all the evidence, my phone, and a small can of pepper spray that David had made me promise to carry. Robert sat in the chair across from me. He leaned forward, his hands clasped together. "Maggie, I know you're angry," he started, "and I know things look bad, but you have to understand." "Understand what?" I interrupted. "That you've been stealing from me for 10 years. That you forged my signature on documents. That you've been planning to divorce me and leave me with nothing while you start a new life with a woman half your age." "She's not half my age," Robert said, then seemed to realize how ridiculous that sounded. "That's not the point. The point is, things are more complicated than you think." "Then explain it to me. Explain how stealing our retirement savings is complicated." Robert rubbed his face with both hands. "I didn't steal anything. I invested our money in a legitimate business. Do you know how much Foster and Associates is worth now? Over $1 million. My share alone is worth $500,000. That's more than we had in retirement." "Your share?" I said. "Not our share. You put it in your name, in a business I knew nothing about." "Because I knew you wouldn't understand." His voice rose, then he caught himself and lowered it again. "Maggie, you've never understood business. You've never understood investments. I was trying to secure our future, to make sure we'd have more than just Social Security and a small pension. By lying to me, by forging my signature, I did what I had to do to protect us," he said. "And yes, I was planning to file for divorce, but I was going to make sure you were taken care of. You'd get the house, your Social Security, and half of everything. That was always the plan. Half of everything." I laughed, and it came out bitter and harsh. "Robert, there is no everything left. You spent it all. And your plan was to tell me you were giving me half of nothing while you kept all the real money hidden in a business I couldn't touch. That's not true. Stop lying." I stood up, my voice shaking. Just stop. I have all the emails, Robert. I know you told Diane you were divorced. I know you gave her my mother's bracelet. I know you planned to serve me with papers on Monday. I know everything. Robert's face went pale. You went through my computer. Yes, I did. And I found out that my husband of 40 years is a thief and a liar. We stared at each other across the living room. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence. What do you want? Robert asked finally. His voice was flat, defeated. I want my money back, all of it, and I want a divorce. Fine, we'll negotiate a settlement. But Maggie, if you try to take me to court, if you try to destroy me publicly, you'll lose too. Lawyers cost money. Court battles cost money. You have no income except Social Security. How are you going to pay for all of this? He thought he had me. He thought I was helpless. I'll manage, I said. You don't have to do this, Robert said. And now his voice took on that pleading tone again. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. Start over. Start over. I stared at him in disbelief. Robert, you've been having an affair for 10 years. You stole our retirement. You gave my mother's jewelry to another woman. You planned to abandon me with nothing. There is no starting over from that. I made mistakes, he said. But I never stopped caring about you. You have to believe that? I don't have to believe anything anymore, I said. I'm done believing you. I turned and walked toward the stairs. I needed to get some clothes, some personal items. I wasn't staying in this house tonight. Where are you going to go? Robert called after me. That's not your concern anymore. I went upstairs to our bedroom. My bedroom, I had to start thinking of it as just mine, and packed a suitcase. Clothes, toiletries, my mother's necklace, some photos of the kids. I worked quickly, trying not to think about how I was packing up 40 years of my life into one suitcase. When I came back downstairs, Robert was standing by the front door. Maggie, please, don't do this. We can fix this. No, I said quietly. We can't. You broke something that can't be fixed. I walked past him and out the door. I called another taxi and waited on the front porch until it arrived. Robert stood in the doorway watching me, but he didn't say anything else. The taxi took me to a hotel near downtown. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and safe. I checked in, went up to my room and sat on the bed. I'd done it. I'd confronted him. I'd walked out of that house, and I still had one more confrontation ahead of me. At 19:45, I took a taxi to the Starbucks on Main Street. I was 15 minutes early, but I wanted to be there first. I wanted to be the one in control. I ordered a tea and sat at a table in the back corner where we could have some privacy. My hands were shaking again, so I wrapped them around the warm cup and tried to breathe steadily. At exactly 2 o'clock, Diane Foster walked through the door. She looked different than she had in her office. Less polished, more human. She wasn't wearing a suit, just jeans and a sweater. Her hair was down, and she looked tired, scared, even. She saw me and walked over slowly, carrying a large manila envelope. Mrs. Carter, she said, sitting down across from me. Margaret, I said. Please call me Margaret. Margaret. She set the envelope on the table between us. I brought the business records, all of them. Every document related to Robert's investment in my company. Thank you. We sat there for a moment, two women on opposite sides of the same betrayal, not sure how to begin. I didn't know, Diane said suddenly. About you. About any of it. He told me he was divorced 5 years ago. He said his ex-wife lived in another state and they'd had an amicable split. He showed me divorce papers. They were fake, I said gently. I know that now. Diane's eyes were red like she'd been crying. After you called yesterday, I went home and searched his things. The things he keeps at my house. I found a wedding ring hidden in the back of a drawer. Your wedding ring, I'm guessing. I touched my own left hand. My wedding ring was still there. I hadn't been able to take it off yet. I also found credit card bills, Diane continued, for charges at our house on Maple Street. Our house. I thought we lived separately because he was taking things slow. But really, he was living with you. Yes, I said. I feel so stupid. Diane put her head in her hands. How did I not see it? 10 years of phone calls that he'd step outside to take. Holidays where he was always with his kids, and I couldn't meet them. Business trips that seemed suspicious. I believed him. I believed him too, I said. For 40 years. Diane looked up at me. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything coming from me, but I'm sorry. If I'd known he was married, I never would have. I know, I said. That's why I'm here. Because I don't think you're a bad person. I think you're another victim of Robert's lies. I pulled out the flash drive from my purse and slid it across the table to her, along with printouts of some of the key documents. The bank statements showing the depleted retirement accounts, the emails where Robert discussed handling things at home, the business filings showing where our money had gone. Diane spent 20 minutes reading through everything. I watched her face change as she processed it all, disbelief, then horror, then anger. This money, she said finally, pointing at the investment records. The money he put into my business. It came from your retirement fund.
Yes.
He told me it was an inheritance from his father. His father died 20 years ago and left him $5,000. Diane closed her eyes. So my entire business, everything I've built, is based on stolen money. Not entirely, I said. You built the business, your work, your skill, your effort. But yes, the seed money that got you started came from theft. What are you going to do? Diane asked. Are you going to sue me? Try to take the business? That depends, I said. On what? On whether you're willing to help me. Diane looked at me warily. Help you how? I leaned forward. I need you to testify. About the money Robert invested, about when he invested it, about what he told you. I need you to provide copies of all your business records showing where the money came from. And I need you to stop protecting him. I'm not protecting him. You are. Just by being with him. Just by letting him hide behind your business. He thinks he's untouchable because the money is tied up in Foster and Associates. He thinks I can't get to it. Can you? Diane asked. With your help, yes. But you have to be willing to open your books completely. You have to be willing to testify that Robert lied to you about where the money came from, and you have to be willing to end your relationship with him. Diane stared at the papers on the table. If I do this, if I testify against him, my business reputation could be destroyed. People will think I was complicit in fraud. Or, I said, people will see that you were another victim who did the right thing when you found out the truth. Diane was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, he called me this morning. He said you were mentally unstable because of the stroke. That you were making up lies to try to get money from him. He said I shouldn't believe anything you told me. But you came anyway, I said. I came because I needed to see the evidence for myself. Diane looked up at me. And now I have. And I know he's been lying to me about everything. She picked up her phone. What are you doing? I asked. Calling my lawyer, Diane said. If I'm going to do this, I need legal protection. I need to make sure I don't go down with him. I can give you my lawyer's name, I said. She's very good. Diane looked at me with something like wonder. Why are you helping me? I slept with your husband for 10 years. Because you didn't know, I said. And because Robert used you the same way he used me. He saw what he wanted and he took it, without caring who he hurt. And I think you're realizing that now. Diane's eyes filled with tears. I thought he loved me. I thought we were building a future together. I thought the same thing 40 years ago, I said. I guess we both learned the hard way that Robert Carter only loves Robert Carter. We sat there for another hour, going through the documents, making plans. Diane called her lawyer, a different one from Patricia, but they agreed to work together. We outlined what evidence Diane could provide, what testimonies she could give. There's one more thing, I said as we were getting ready to leave. Your bracelet. The diamond one. Diane looked down at her wrist. She was wearing it today. It belonged to my mother, I said quietly. And her mother before that. Robert stole it from me and gave it to you. Diane's face crumpled. Without a word, she took off the bracelet and handed it to me. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I took the bracelet and put it in my purse next to my mother's necklace. They were together again the way they should be. Thank you, I said. As we left the Starbucks together. Diane Turpin's now, I said. We make sure Robert loses everything, the same way he tried to make me lose everything. I want to help, Diane said. Not just with testimony. However I can help, I will. He destroyed both of our lives. He should pay for that. I looked at this woman who'd been my enemy just days ago, who was now my unlikely ally, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Then let's get to work, I said. The next 3 weeks were a blur of legal meetings, document reviews, and strategic planning. Patricia Montgomery and Diane's lawyer, a sharp woman named Rebecca Chen, worked together to build an airtight case against Robert. Diane provided everything: 10 years of business records, emails, financial statements, investment agreements. She also gave a sworn deposition about Robert's lies, about how he'd told her he was divorced, about the jewelry, about everything. This is gold, Patricia told me after reviewing Diane's testimony. With her cooperation, we can prove not just that he stole from you, but that he committed fraud in multiple ways. Forging signatures, lying to business partners, hiding assets. Margaret, this is going to be big. But Robert wasn't going quietly. His lawyer filed counter motions claiming I was mentally incompetent due to the stroke. They demanded medical evaluations, psychiatric assessments. They claimed I was being manipulated by David and Lisa, that I didn't understand what I was signing. It's a desperation move, Patricia said. They know they're losing, so they're trying to discredit you. Don't worry. We'll have your doctors testify that you're fully competent. Robert also started calling the kids directly. He told David that I was having delusions, that I needed to be in a care facility. He told Lisa that I was being taken advantage of by unscrupulous lawyers who just wanted money. Neither of them believed him. He must think we're idiots, Lisa said when she called to tell me about his latest attempt. Like we can't see through his manipulation. Mom, we're with you 100%. Whatever you need. What I needed was for this to be over. The stress was affecting my health, my blood pressure kept spiking, and I was having trouble sleeping. The doctor increased my medication and reminded me again to avoid stress. I wanted to laugh. How was I supposed to avoid stress when I was in the middle of the biggest battle of my life? But I kept going, because the alternative, giving up, letting Robert win, was unthinkable. 4 weeks after I'd filed for divorce, we had our first major hearing. It was for the restraining order on the assets and for temporary spousal support while the divorce was pending. I dressed carefully that morning in my best suit, the navy one I'd worn to church for years. I put on my mother's necklace and bracelet. Armor, I thought. I'm going into battle and I need my armor. Patricia picked me up and drove me to the courthouse. Remember, she said as we parked, don't react to anything his lawyer says. Don't engage with Robert. Just sit quietly and let me handle everything. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Robert was already there with his lawyer, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit named Gerald Brennan. Robert wouldn't look at me when I walked in. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Judge Sarah Patterson. She had gray hair and sharp eyes that reminded me of Patricia. This is a hearing on the motion for asset restraint and temporary support in the matter of Carter v. Carter, she said, looking down at her papers. Mr. Brennan, you may present your argument. Robert's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, my client strongly opposes this restraining order. Mrs. Carter has made serious and unfounded accusations against Mr. Carter based on a misunderstanding of their finances. Mr. Carter has been the primary financial manager of the household for 40 years, and he has always acted in their joint best interest. Furthermore, Mrs. Carter recently suffered a stroke, and we have concerns about her mental capacity to make these decisions. I felt my face get hot, but I kept my expression neutral like Patricia had told me. Your Honor! Patricia stood up. We have medical documentation that Mrs. Carter has made a full recovery and is completely competent. These accusations are not unfounded. We have extensive evidence of asset misappropriation, including forged signatures, unauthorized transfers, and hidden business partnerships. We also have a cooperating witness who can testify to Mr. Carter's deceptive practices. Judge Patterson looked interested. A cooperating witness? Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Diane Foster, Mr. Carter's business partner and… Patricia paused delicately. Companion, she has provided sworn testimony about Mr. Carter's deception regarding both his marital status and the source of his investment in their joint business. Robert's face went white. His lawyer looked surprised. Clearly, Robert hadn't told him about Diane's betrayal. Your Honor, Brennan said quickly, we were not informed that Ms. Foster would be involved in these proceedings. That's because your client lied to you about her existence, Patricia said smoothly. Just as he lied to Ms. Foster about being divorced, and just as he lied to his wife about where their retirement savings went. Enough, Judge Patterson said. Mr. Brennan, I'm going to ask you directly. Did your client inform you that he has been in a long-term relationship with a business partner while still married to Mrs. Carter? Brennan hesitated. Your Honor, my client's personal life. Answer the question, Counselor. No, Your Honor. He did not inform me of that. Judge Patterson looked at Robert with an expression that could freeze water. Mr. Carter, stand up. Robert stood slowly, his face pale. Mr. Carter, do you deny that you've been in a romantic relationship with Ms. Diane Foster for the past 10 years while married to Mrs. Carter? Robert's mouth opened and closed. His lawyer put a hand on his arm, but Robert pushed it away. No, Your Honor, he said quietly. I don't deny it. And do you deny that you invested marital funds into a business partnership with Ms. Foster without your wife's knowledge or consent? Another pause. The investments were made to benefit our mutual financial future. That's not what I asked. Did you invest marital funds without your wife's knowledge or consent? Yes or no? Yes. The word hung in the air like a confession. Judge Patterson sat back in her chair. Mr. Brennan, I'm going to save us all a lot of time here. Based on what I've heard today, it's clear that Mr. Carter has engaged in financial misconduct. I'm granting Mrs. Carter's motion for asset restraint. All joint accounts and any accounts containing marital funds are frozen as of this moment. Mr. Carter is also ordered to provide a complete accounting of all his financial holdings, including his stake in Foster and Associates, within 30 days. Your Honor, Brennan started, but she held up a hand. I'm not finished. I'm also granting temporary spousal support to Mrs. Carter in the amount of $3,000 per month, to be paid from Mr. Carter's individual income. And Mr. Brennan, I suggest you have a very serious conversation with your client about settlement, because if this case goes to trial he's going to lose, badly. This hearing is adjourned. She banged her gavel. Patricia squeezed my hand. We won, she whispered. I looked across the courtroom at Robert. He was sitting with his head in his hands. His lawyer was gathering papers with sharp, angry movements, the kind of movements that said his client had just cost him his credibility. As we left the courtroom, I saw Diane standing in the hallway. She'd come to watch, even though she wasn't called to testify yet. When she saw me, she gave a small nod. Robert saw her too, his face twisted with rage. You, he said, walking toward her. You did this. You destroyed everything. No, Diane said, her voice steady. You destroyed everything. I just stopped letting you hide it. Security guards stepped between them before Robert could get any closer. Patricia steered me away, but I heard Robert shouting behind us. You'll regret this, both of you. Empty threats, Patricia said as we walked to her car. He's scared and cornered. That's when men like him lash out. What happens now? I asked. Now we wait for his financial disclosure. Once we see everything he has, we'll know exactly how much you're owed. And then we negotiate a settlement. And if he won't settle, then we go to trial. But Margaret, after what happened in there today, after the judge saw him admit to everything, he'd be a fool to go to trial. His own lawyer knows he'd lose. She was right. 2 weeks later, Robert's lawyer called Patricia with a settlement offer. We met in Patricia's office to review it. She spread the papers across her desk. He's offering you the house, your car, half of his Social Security, and a lump sum payment of $200,000. That's not even half of what he stole, I said. I know. But here's the thing. His share of Foster and Associates is currently worth about $500,000, but it's tied up in the business. To get that money, he'd have to sell his share or dissolve the partnership with Diane. He's betting that you'll take the cash now rather than wait for him to liquidate his business assets. What do you think I should do? Patricia leaned back in her chair. Honestly, I think we can get more. I think we should counteroffer at $350,000, plus the house, the car, and spousal support. And we should demand that he buy you out of his business stake at fair market value. Will he agree to that? He will when his lawyer explains that the alternative is going to trial, where a judge might order him to pay even more, plus legal fees, plus possible criminal charges for fraud. Patricia sent the counter-offer that afternoon. 3 days later, Robert's lawyer called back. He'll agree to $300,000, the house, the car, and 18 months of spousal support at $2,000 a month. Patricia told me after the call. He won't go higher than that. His business assets are too tied up, and he doesn't have more liquid cash. I thought about it. $300,000 wasn't everything I'd lost, but it was enough. Enough to rebuild. What about the fraud charges? I asked. Will he face criminal charges? Patricia hesitated. That's up to the district attorney. We can file a complaint, but they might not prosecute. Financial elder abuse cases are hard to prove criminally, especially when it's a spouse. The civil case is stronger. I thought about Robert possibly walking away without criminal consequences. It made me angry, but I was also tired. So tired of fighting, of stress, of looking over my shoulder. I'll take the settlement, I said. But I want one more thing in the agreement. What's that? I want him to sign an affidavit admitting what he did, not just agreeing to the settlement terms, but actually admitting that he stole from me, forged my signature, and lied about his marital status. I want it in writing. Patricia smiled. I like it. That document could be used as evidence if you ever need to file criminal charges later, and it protects you if he tries to claim the settlement was unfair. Let me see what I can do." 2 days later, Robert agreed. His lawyer wasn't happy about it. I'm sure he advised against it, but Robert was desperate to end this. He wanted it over as much as I did. We signed the settlement papers in Patricia's office. Robert and I sat on opposite sides of the conference table, not looking at each other. Our lawyers handled everything, passing papers back and forth, pointing to signature lines. When it was done, Robert stood up and walked toward the door. Then he stopped and turned back to me. "I hope you're happy," he said. His voice was bitter. "You destroyed my life." I looked at him, really looked at him, for what I knew would be the last time. "No, Robert," I said quietly. "You destroyed your own life. I just stopped letting you destroy mine too." He left without another word. After he was gone, Patricia handed me a check for $300,000 and the deed to the house, now in my name alone. "It's over," she said. "You're free." I stared at that check, at the deed, at the signed affidavit where Robert admitted to everything he'd done. Free. I was free. 3 months later, I stood in my kitchen now, not ours, making coffee and watching the morning sun stream through the window. The house felt different. Lighter, somehow. I'd rearranged the furniture, painted the bedroom a soft blue, packed away the photos of Robert and me together. David and Lisa had helped me turn Robert's office into a guest room. I'd also started volunteering at a women's center downtown, helping other women who were going through financial abuse. Patricia had introduced me to the organization, and I'd found that sharing my story helped others, and helped me heal too. Diane and I met for coffee once a month. Our relationship was strange. We weren't exactly friends, but we'd bonded over our shared experience of surviving Robert's betrayal. She'd restructured her business, bought out Robert's share using a loan, and was slowly rebuilding her reputation. She'd also started dating someone new, a kind accountant who'd never been married and had no secret families. "I'm learning to trust again," she'd told me at our last coffee date. Slowly, very slowly. "Me too," I'd said. Robert had moved to Florida. I'd heard through mutual acquaintances that he was working as an insurance consultant again, living in a small apartment, trying to rebuild his life. Diane had told me he'd tried to contact her several times, apologizing and asking for another chance. She'd blocked his number. I'd blocked his number too. Some days were harder than others. Some days I woke up and forgot for just a moment that I was divorced, that I was alone, that 40 years of my life had ended in betrayal and courtrooms and settlement checks. But most days I was okay. Better than okay, actually. I'd learned something important through all of this. I was stronger than I'd ever known. For 40 years, I'd let Robert make me believe I was helpless, that I didn't understand money or business or the complicated world outside our home. But I'd fought back. I'd gathered evidence, hired lawyers, confronted my husband's mistress, and won. I'd survived. My phone rang. It was Lisa calling for our weekly check-in. "Hi, Mom. How are you feeling?" "Good," I said. "And I meant it. David and I were talking. We want to take you on a trip. Somewhere you've always wanted to go. Our treat." I thought about it. Where did I want to go? For 40 years our vacations had been Robert's choice. Fishing trips, golf resorts, places he wanted to visit. "Ireland," I said suddenly. "I've always wanted to see Ireland. My grandmother was from there." "Ireland it is," Lisa said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "We'll start planning." After we hung up, I poured my coffee and went to sit on the back porch. The garden needed work. I'd neglected it during the divorce proceedings. But spring was coming, and I could already see the first signs of new growth. I thought about Robert's parting words. "You destroyed my life." He'd been wrong. I hadn't destroyed his life. I'd simply refused to let him destroy mine. There's a difference. I'd spent 40 years being Margaret Carter, wife and librarian, the woman who trusted too much and asked too few questions. But I wasn't that woman anymore. Now I was just Margaret, survivor, fighter, grandmother, friend, volunteer, woman who learned, at 67 years old, that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, never too late to fight back, never too late to reclaim your life. I took a sip of my coffee and watched the sun rise higher in the sky. It was going to be a good day. 1 year later, I received a letter from the district attorney's office. They'd reviewed the affidavit Robert signed as part of our settlement, along with all the evidence Patricia had provided. They were filing criminal charges against him for elder financial abuse and fraud. It's rare for them to prosecute these cases, Patricia told me over the phone. But your documentation was so thorough, and his signed admission was so damning. They felt they had to act. Robert went to trial 6 months later. I didn't attend. I'd said everything I needed to say in my deposition. But Diane testified in person, and according to the news reports, her testimony was devastating. Robert was convicted on 3 counts of fraud and sentenced to 18 months in prison, followed by 5 years of probation. When Patricia called to tell me the verdict, I didn't feel triumphant, I didn't feel vindicated or happy. I just felt tired and sad for the waste of it all. "How do you feel?" Patricia asked. "I feel like it's finally over," I said. And it was. I went to Ireland with David and Lisa that summer. We visited my grandmother's village, walked the green hills, drank Guinness in pubs, and laughed together. Really laughed, for the first time in what felt like forever. I turned 60, 9 years old in Dublin, surrounded by my children and my grandchildren, eating chocolate cake and making wishes for the future. Back home, I continued my volunteer work. I spoke at workshops for senior citizens about protecting themselves from financial abuse. I helped other women gather evidence, find lawyers, and fight back against spouses and family members who tried to steal from them. "You're saving lives," one woman told me after I helped her escape a similar situation. "You're giving us hope." Maybe I was, or maybe I was just paying forward the help that Patricia and Diane and that kind nurse at the hospital had given me. Either way, it felt good. It felt right. Some evenings, I sat on my back porch with a cup of tea and thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the fight, the victory, the aftermath. I thought about the woman I'd been. The one who'd trusted blindly, who'd never questioned, who'd let someone else control her entire financial life. And I thought about the woman I'd become. Stronger, wiser, more careful, but also more compassionate. Because I knew what it felt like to be betrayed. I knew what it felt like to have your whole world crumble. And I knew what it felt like to rebuild. My mother's diamond bracelet sat in its box on my dresser, next to her necklace. Sometimes I wore them, but mostly I just looked at them and remembered. Remembered my mother, my grandmother, and the strength that ran in our family's blood. Strength I'd forgotten I had until I needed it most. Robert tried to contact me once after he got out of prison. A letter, forwarded through Patricia's office. He said he was sorry. He said he'd made terrible mistakes. He said he hoped someday I could forgive him. I read the letter once, then put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I would forgive him, for my own peace of mind if nothing else. But that day wasn't today. Today, I had a garden to tend, volunteers to train, grandchildren to video chat with, and a whole life ahead of me, a life that was finally, completely mine.